History calls Lorgar Aurelian the original failure, the weakest of the Primarchs, a zealot who broke the galaxy over his desperate need for a god. That's why they call him the First Heretic. But there's a fatal problem with that story. His failure is the only reason the Imperium still stands, because his heresy is the bedrock of its survival. To understand this, you have to be willing to see the sin not as rebellion, but as obedience. Welcome, Initiate. The official record is clear. Lorgar, the Golden Sun, Primarch of the Wordbearers, traded his loyalty for damnation and dragged half the galaxy with him. He is the architect of the Imperium's ruin. That's the scripture they want you to believe. But scripture is a story, selected and edited for a purpose. And this one has a single fatal flaw that, once seen, unravels everything. It begins, as all great tragedies do, with an act of love. He didn't worship his father out of weakness nor delusion. He did it because he genuinely believed the Emperor was the answer to everything humanity had ever suffered. Every cathedral he built, every prayer he wrote, it wasn't vanity but love. The kind of love that survives every warning sign. His legion, the Wordbearers, moved slower than any other during the Great Crusade. Not from weakness, but because on every world they conquered, they built cathedrals and spread the gospel of the God Emperor across the stars. But the Emperor despised this. His Great Crusade ran on the imperial truth, secular, cold, and rational, with no gods or faith, only steel and science. The lesson was delivered at Monarchia, Lorgar's masterpiece, a world capital built entirely as a testament to his father's glory. The Emperor didn't send a reprimand. He sent the entire Ultramarines Legion not to conquer Monarchia, but to erase it. And when it was ash, the Emperor himself appeared and forced Lorgar and his entire legion to kneel in the ruins of everything they'd built. 100,000 transhuman warriors brought to their knees in the graveyard of their own faith. This is officially where Lorgar breaks, where he changes, and with his spirit shattered, he goes searching for a new truth, and finds it in chaos. Obviously, that is a problem. Here is what they forgot to tell about this story. The Emperor was not a clumsy father. I know, bear with me for a moment, let me explain. He was the greatest psychologist who ever lived, a being of impossible intellect who had guided humanity from the shadows for millennia. He tailored himself perfectly to each of his sons. A stoic general, a shining god, he was a grand master of the human soul. And this being made the one move guaranteed to create a traitor? He took his most devout, spiritually attuned son, the one Primarch defined entirely by his need to believe, and didn't just punish him for his faith. He tortured him for it and humiliated him on a galactic scale, using a brother to do it, ensuring not just sorrow, but resentment. A move so perfectly engineered for disaster, it had to be deliberate. But how could we know that? Unless there is a plan for it hidden in plain sight. Let's start with the Emperor's core problem. His Great Crusade was built on a cold rationality, the imperial truth. But a secular empire is brittle because it can be reasoned with, argued against, and broken by truths it refuses to acknowledge. Faith is different. It is absolute, a weapon that sharpens with every blow landed against it. The Emperor publicly refused to wield it, so he built someone who would. At Monarchia, he didn't extinguish a flame, he poured fuel on it, showing Lorgar, in the most brutal way possible, that the imperial truth wasn't a philosophy. It was a dogma enforced by overwhelming violence. He didn't teach his son that gods weren't real. He taught his son that his god was a tyrant. So, something changes in Lorgar. He doesn't collapse after Monarchia. He searches with his most trusted advisors, Erebus and Cor Pharaon. They had been whispering of the primordial truth long before the city burned. They just had to wait for their Primarch to be ready to listen, and Monarchia did the job. Lorgar's journey into the Eye of Terror wasn't a stumble into corruption, it was a pilgrimage. The search of a man whose father had shown him there was no truth left to find in the Imperium. You already see the problem, don't you? Lorgar didn't seek chaos out of weakness, he did because his father had aimed him directly at it. The rails were placed, The wound and resentment was precisely calibrated. Lorgar didn't stumble into damnation, he was pointed there. If we judge Lorgar's heresy by its stated goal, to overthrow the Emperor and enthrone the Chaos Gods, it was a catastrophic failure. But it was a perfect, unqualified success at something else entirely, killing the Imperial truth forever. Before the heresy, the Imperium was an empire of cold reason, and after that, it was a wreck. A corpse floating in the dark, its founding principles ash, its leader a broken body wired into a golden machine. Logic offered no comfort against the demons now clawing through reality. Reason offered nothing to the trillions of dead. Humanity was traumatized, leaderless, and terrified. Humanity needed faith. And into that vacuum, a forbidden text began to circulate. Passed hand to hand among the survivors, a book Lorgar had written years before, at the height of his devotion, titled the Lectitio Divinitatis. It spoke of the Emperor not as a man, but as the divine protector of humanity. The seeds Lorgar had planted, the very crime for which he was condemned, bloomed in the blood-soaked soil of his own rebellion. On a million shattered worlds, desperate people found that book, and in its pages, found the one thing that could hold them together. His heresy didn't just wound the Emperor, it transformed him from the rational man and martyred him, raising a god in his place. Lorgar, in his quest to serve a worthy god, had accidentally created one. This outcome is too precise, too elegant to be coincidence. The single most powerful force holding the 41st Millennium Imperium together is the Imperial Creed, the Ecclesiarchy, the fanatical worship of the God Emperor spanning a million worlds, all of it built directly on Lorgar's forbidden teachings. A book for which he was shamed became the foundational text of the civilization that curses his name. That is the mother of all ironies. Unless, the Emperor always knew his secular dream was doomed. Unless he understood, with his cold, inhuman logic, that to survive the horrors waiting in the dark, humanity needed something reason could never provide. A faith forged in the fires of the ultimate betrayal. A belief so absolute, it could stare down cosmic annihilation and not flinch. Which would mean Lorgar was never a traitor, but the sacrifice. The one who loved his father most was sent into damnation to build the church that would save everyone else. His heresy was not his failure, if this is true. It was his true and final purpose. This modern Imperium is not the Emperor's creation. He laid the foundation, but the cathedral itself, that is Lorgar's. A twisted, fanatical, monstrous empire of faith that has survived 10,000 years of unrelenting horror against all odds. It condemns his heresy with one breath, while praying with the words he wrote with the next. There are two versions of Lorgar Aurelian. In one, he is the most tragic son in history, a man of pure faith, destroyed by the father he loved, who spent eternity in damnation, never knowing his suffering was the point. In the other, he is something colder, a weapon that never knew it was loaded, aimed, fired, and left to burn, so that everything he touched could be transformed into something his father needed more than a loyal son. The Illuminati Broadcast Network doesn't tell you what to believe, but I want to know where you stand, Initiate. Was Lorgar the Emperor's greatest failure, or his greatest saint? The report on Lorgar Aurelian is closed. Hoped you like it, and thanks for watching.